Let's give some rapid fire answers to tough questions.
Welcome to the Therapy Brothers podcast.
I'm Brannon.
I'm Tyler.
We're brothers.
We're therapists.
And we know recovery.
Bring your stories, your questions, your successes with real recovery.
Hey, Tyler, you ready to have some hard conversations?
Let's do it.
Let the Therapy Brothers podcast begin.
Brannon, what's going on, man?
Not much, just getting ready for Christmas season. I guess technically 1 week from today is the big day.
Yeah, at the time of recording. So by the time people are hearing this, it's past Christmas and they're into their New Year's resolutions.
Happy New Year's, guys. Maybe they went to the gym this week.
Yeah, the gym
it's one of those days that they went to the gym.
The gym is chock full right now.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I laugh like we're making fun of them, right?
It's us. It's us.
Yeah. It's us. Dang it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's all of us. We're all in this together, guys.
We can all relate.
Yeah, we can all relate. We've all been there. So at least, hey, enjoy your workout today.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Tyler, we're behind. Admittedly, we're behind. We have a lot of good questions that have been submitted to us through our website. It's therapybros.com, right?
Yep, that's right.
A lot of good questions over there. So we need to do a little catch up today.
We got backlogged. The way that we kind of do the show is that over there at therapybros.com, you can go on and you can either sign up to become a guest, which we love to have guests, and that takes top priority. Mm-hmm. And so we'll always push people who are willing to come on and actually be vulnerable to the front. But then there's also a feature where you can submit a question, and we've gotten backlogged on several questions with people who have just submitted questions. So today we're going to try to get through a few of those and at least try to clear out the queue, even though we're not even going to make a dent in it really. But we do appreciate your questions. We do appreciate you reaching out. And so today we're going to make an attempt to at least answer a few of those.
Yep. Okay. So, Tyler, you go first. Which one do you want to get into?
All right. Here's our first one. And hopefully we can do some clarifying with this one. It says, I am so grateful to have found your podcast. It's an incredible resource and is literally changing the lives of me and my family. Everything you said rings true to me, except one. When you guys are laughingly talking about planning how to get your wife to have sex later that night by coming up with chores, favors to do in the hopes that she'll be willing later. As a wife who has spent 2 decades enduring obligatory unwanted sex before realizing I could say no and not feel guilty about it, even if he did do the dishes, those comments hurt. How is that behavior not manipulative at best and transactional prostitution sex at worst?
Wow, Tyler, you picked the one that calls us out.
Yeah. Well, we get called out from time to time.
Yeah, like call. I kind of remember having a conversation about this. We've done so many episodes, so I don't remember exactly how it went down or what the context of it was.
I think Brannon, we've had this conversation a few times in different kinds of contexts, and maybe I'll explain what I thought the context was versus how this was interpreted, and then we can maybe have a discussion around the question too.
We'll have back and maybe listen to it.
Yeah, so there's a pretty common thing that happens inside of recovery with couples trying to heal from, unwanted sexual behaviors, affairs, things like that. And I think we probably jokingly talked about this. It's a term in my men's groups. We often refer to it as the daily quest, where the way that a man gets socialized in the world that he's socialized in is, and this is through pornography, it's through other forms of socialization, it becomes the daily quest to somehow end with having sex with your partner. And the intention is because, I want to feel close, I want to feel connected, I want to validate myself sometimes as a man that's desired or wanted. It's not always a healthy thing.
Or I just want to get off.
Yeah, or I just want that release or relief, whatever it is. So there's a lot of different reasons for it. And maybe we've laughingly joked about it, but I think we probably were laughingly joking about it in the sense that this is really common, like common humanity. It's something that we're not actually endorsing. We're saying this is the way it works for so many couples, and it's something that actually needs to shift and change over time if there's going to be deeper, healthier sex in the relationship.
Yeah. I think, understanding her side of being on the other side of it, where you felt manipulated and used and gaslit into being so vulnerable sexually, where it's like, yeah, I did the dishes, but I did the dishes so that I can get in your pants. And then being vulnerable that way and then realizing this was more of a selfish act. I can see why that was upsetting to her to hear us kind of joking about it that way.
Yes, especially when she's been in pain for she's experienced the very thing we were joking about, but
Yeah.
it's not a joke to her.
Yeah. And yeah,
Right.
exactly. Like, and the thing she said about it being manipulative is what we were saying. Like, we, you know, pursuit of your partner sexually, that daily quest or whatever you want to call it, pursuit of your partner sexually is not a bad thing. But the thing about it is, Tyler, we see men and even ourselves personally, I'm sure we've done this. I know I have, showing up in a weak way in order to try to connect, as opposed to a vulnerable way, where you actually connect fully, right? And so, yeah, I'll do the dishes because you'll think I'm a good boy, like, and then maybe you'll have sex with me later. That's not very healthy sex, correct?
Right.
Right. That's what we're saying. So I am sorry if we laughed about that. I was not sensitive to how that might be feel to the partner who actually experienced that on the other side. We were laughing, we were mocking it and laughing about it because it is a joke. It's not like healthy masculinity. It's not healthiness in any way, right, Tyler? So
That's right.
yeah.
And the goal here is to actually, as you work into your deeper into your recovery, you start. I think the reason it's not wrong to want to be sexual with your partner or to have the drive towards it at all. Where it kind of becomes unhealthy or sort of a barrier to the relationship is when it's done in a consumptive way, and when the focus gets that way. So it's like I think we told this story before in the podcast, but a guy comes in the group and he sits down, he's so frustrated, and he's like, "Well, what's going on for you, man?" He's like, "Man, I've done the dishes for 33 straight days and we haven't had sex."
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's the problem, is that you're counting. Like, you're doing the dishes because you're trying to be an equal partner to help out around the house and show your partner you love her. And it's not attached to having sex or not.
Which Tyler, here's it's such a catch 22 because it's like, what's more attractive to a partner when I do the dishes and then I have an expectation of you're going to have sex with me because I did the dishes,
You
because
owe me.
you owe me. And
Ew.
so it's every dish I put in the dishwasher, every cup that's in the dishwasher adds pressure to later on that night. Like, yeah, see. Or so is that more attractive? Or somebody who just wants to do the dishes because they are involved in the household, because they are part of this whole thing, because they want to, because it's who they are, independent of that need for sex because they did the dishes, right? And here's like the whole catch 22 to it. The person who just shows up in that authentic strength is really attractive and will probably have more sex,
Yes.
right? Because of actual connection and strength and stability in that relationship. Because, wow, like, you're a partner who actually inside of you is not manipulating your way. You would do the dishes if I injured myself and couldn't have sex with you for the next however long. Like, you would still do the dishes. That's very attractive, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyways, I appreciate this question. So, should we move on to the next one?
Yeah. Your call, Brannon. What's the next one?
Um. Okay. Uh. says, I feel like my feminine side is more than my masculine side. How do I increase masculinity?
Okay, I guess I'm wondering with that question, I hope that inside of that question, it's not laden with a sense of shame or self-judgment because you think you should be something that you're not first.
Yeah, I mean we're missing a lot of context there
Yeah,
with that question. So yeah, first and foremost, we need to say that because we don't know exactly what's going on inside of this person, right?
right.
Um, but you just said something, Tyler, that I think is important. Is I hope it's not laden with a lot of should, because you're kind of saying something else. What you're saying is like start with accepting yourself. Is that
That's
what you're
right.
saying?
That's right. And I'm kind of going off of like, what I think are kind of, again, we're talking about social norms a little bit, that it seems that we live in a world where when you look at the kind of the differences between masculine and feminine, or even the discussion, even though you don't say it, there's like almost this inherent judgment that a lot of people place that masculine is like more desirable or better or somehow better than feminine. And I think that is completely false. And so if the question is coming from that place, let's call it out for what it is, which is that there's no judgment in that,
Is it
right?
o- is it okay for me to be, and I'm just kind of lobbing this up there for you. Okay. So like, but is it okay for me to be feminine if I'm a man?
100% yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Explain.
So because that's the nature of who I am, right? So I might relate in a lot of ways. I kind of fall into this category with part of my own personality, that there's elements of my personality that I think actually lend themselves more towards the side of femininity than to masculinity. There's other parts of my personality that I think are more masculine, right? But those are some of my greatest gifts as a therapist with what I do for a living.
You know what's funny though, Tyler? Like as your brother, it's easy. It would be easy for me to make fun of you, um, to kind of mock that part of you because in our social norms, like that's weakness. That's you shouldn't be feminine as a guy. You shouldn't. So as a brother, it's banter and make fun of that. But really, as an adult, as I talk about this with you, and you're talking about it as a therapist, for as a someone who's more mature, who can back up and say that's freaking awesome that you can claim your femininity, that you can honor that and use that for your purposes with God. And I think what you said, it's in your nature. Explain that. It's in your nature. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so I'll give you a couple of examples, Brandon, since we're talking about like brother stuff. I have always been one that's kind of worn my emotions on my sleeve. I cry a lot. I'm pretty open with my feelings. I remember going back to school shopping one year with like you and the cousins, some of our other cousins, and one of our other cousins picked up a shirt and it was like a polo shirt that was like pink and green, and he's like, "Hey, this one's like kind of gay. It looks like something Tyler would wear." Like kind of like that,
Uh-huh.
like, and then I show my emotions, and I always felt like because I cried a lot, I took that as like the scarlet letter of shame. And it's only been through growing up and then getting into my own recovery and learning this that I actually kind of look at my ability to be emotional and to actually be in touch with those emotions as a badge of honor now. And those that's just kind of who I am. It's always been there in me. That emotional side, the part that kind of has tears flow freely, you know, and I probably
I
spent more years trying to stifle it than I did trying to just accept it.
I think it's important to be able to distinguish between true self and masks. So, what you're talking about, I know you probably better than most people, right? And so I know what you're saying is your true self. Because I know you on that level. I think sometimes with masculinity and femininity, we use it as a means to protect and avoid vulnerability. And so to distinguish between with this question, he's saying, I want more masculinity. Maybe in his nature, there is more masculinity, but he has trauma that says masculinity is bad. He
Could
has
be
father
that.
wounds. He has stuff that has stuffed it down. And so now he's got some level of suffering going on in his life, trying to wake him up, trying to say, hey, like, there's this part of you that's really important.
You need to cultivate that part of you now.
Let's cultivate that part. Let's step into it, even though it's scary, even though it's hard, even though you're facing some fear and some trauma around it. It's time to step into that. And so it's both. It's accept your true nature, love yourself with where you're at, but also be aware if there's parts that you don't allow that are part of your true nature because of your trauma, to come forth and to come out.
Yeah. So looking at it, so we just answered kind of a quick question to the one angle of the question is if you're feeling shame about it, back off and practice some acceptance. But now what you're also saying is maybe you're doing your work and you're uncovering that, hey, there are these parts of me that I just haven't cultivated, but it's time to cultivate them now.
Yep.
What if that's the angle with which the question is being asked, Brannon, how do you cultivate that?
Yeah. And there's absolutely some things. So I'll give kind of a few things you can do. One of the main things is to surround yourself with healthy masculinity, and experience healthy masculinity. And so it's one thing to put yourself around a bunch of good, healthy men. It's another thing to put yourself around a bunch of healthy, good men and actually open up a little bit. Show yourself. Accept love from them. Feel of their love. Feel of their power. Feel of their strength. And when you feel that, you'll know what it is. And so that's one thing that you can do in order to cultivate masculinity. Tyler, why don't you go next? I got more, but let's take turns.
No, I think that's great. I also think just looking for the place where it feels the scariest now that you're uncovering this part of yourself is the place to act with courage. So to step into that spot. So if there's a certain part of your life where you're going, I do need to figure out how to stand up for myself a little more. I do need to figure out how to have a voice or to be more consistent or whatever that is at this one area of life. Make the commitment to step into that with courage, knowing it'll be difficult, but see it as an act of courage.
Everything inside of you might be saying, don't do that. And it might be the thing you need to practice, that steadiness and strength of I can stand in truth even if it's difficult. And that might be a little thing like having a boundary with somebody, or a big thing of, like taking a stand on something that people aren't going to like you for. So God, I had another one, Tyler. It just slipped my mind. Oh, I got it. Part How do I explain this? Well, one thing with masculinity is living on the edge a little bit. So living adventurous and like in war a little bit. We talk about this a lot. But if you're just living to get comfortable and to survive, you're not cultivating your masculine heart. So push yourself on that edge, whether it's doing things that get your adrenaline pumping, fighting a battle, standing in truth, carrying a banner, so to speak. Push yourself on that edge. That's masculine in nature.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. Any more, Tyler?
Yeah, just to go along with that, and then we'll move on to the next question here. I just heard a quote this week that I thought was interesting, and this is like a side note, but it's kind of fits with what you were saying, is that idea of comfort and the pursuit of comfort. The quote that I heard was that aging is actually just the over pursuit of comfort, and that there's something about the need to kind of test ourselves and press ourselves. And that actually helps to keep us young in some ways too. So,
yeah, I saw an article this week. A 93-year-old man, he's like getting 25 days of skiing in this year, and they asked him, they're like, well, how do you do that? And he gave it the simplest answer. He's like, how do I do this? I just never stop doing it. I just keep going. So he hasn't allowed himself to age because he just keeps living. He keeps putting himself out there. So
Yeah.
yeah, I can I add one more weird one, then we can move on.
You bet.
Um, your posture can really help with your masculine energy, your masculinity. And Tyler, I'm sure you've experienced this with a man who comes into your office who has no idea about his masculinity. How does he show up?
Just kind of crumpled over, folded in,
Yeah,
shrinking.
yep. And how does he look at you?
Not a lot of eye contact, kind of a head down, eyes on the floor kind of a thing.
Yeah. So your body language, your posture, if you're this is gonna if you're standing erect, and the pun is intended here, um, because that's masculine, right? If you're standing erect, if you're standing firm, it's masculine. So I'm trying to not make this an explicit episode.
You kind of are though, Brannon.
You should see Tyler's face. He's like getting a little uncomfortable.
I'm just like, okay, Brannon, how many more of these are you going to throw in?
um, but the point that you see the point I'm making, right?
Yes.
Yeah, confidence. Like show up with a presence of confidence, even if you're unconfident. So if you want to nurture masculinity, you got to kind of fake it till you make it. You got to feel that. What does it feel to look somebody in the eye, directly, to speak directly, to stand directly, and assertively? That's a good way to practice masculinity. So,
Great.
all right,
All good.
like, great. Move on.
All good things. Let's move on before you throw in some other remark. No, actually, no, that's really good, Brannon.
Stand tall, Tyler. Stand tall, brother.
I will. All right. This next one, it comes from Jeff, and this one might be something we need to do a whole episode about, but I feel like we should respond to it. First off, I want to thank you both for your content. It's been immensely helpful for me on my journey, and I'll forever be grateful for your support, even though we have never met in person. First, Jeff, thank you. Appreciate you being a listener here. I just listened to your most recent episode with Abraham where you talked about sustained recovery, and it surfaced an emotion and question that I've had at various times as I've listened to your podcast. What does a completely godless recovery look like? In your content, I feel like I pick up on a message that suggests recovery is dependent on a relationship with God. I grew up very LDS, 4 years into transitioning in my faith, and frankly, I'm in a spot where I hate all things God. I know that sounds harsh, but that's where I'm at. Jeff, man, I'm glad you had the courage to reach out and ask this question. I don't think you're actually alone in that wrestle with God, and it sounds like you're in a spot where you hate all things God. I don't know if that means you believe or don't believe anything right now. But what do you think, Brannon?
I think it's very healthy and very good to fire a God that produces shame and self-rejection in your life. And so if the way he was raised and the religion he followed, the ideas of God led to those things, then a crisis of faith and a crisis of what God is and going through grief and anger toward God or whatever it is awesome because it's progression out of that shame system. And I also think there's something beyond staying stuck in anger. So on one hand, I'm saying this is awesome. Be right where you're at. That's okay. I don't think, Tyler, we have our own beliefs about God, you and I, and even your and my beliefs differ, right? Tyler and I'm going to speak for you here, Tyler. Tyler and I do not want anybody to believe in God the way that we think you absolutely should. I hope whatever you believe in, whatever it is, it helps you find peace and love. And that's what you feel. That's what you resonate in. And so whether you're worshiping the sun or whether you're worshiping a heavenly Father, or whether you're worshiping, but you find something outside of yourself in order to find peace. And so I do have a hard time, Tyler, and I have a hard time with nothingness, with like I have nothing. It's all within just me. And that's just because of my own personal stuff. I've connected so much to things outside of myself. So I have a hard time with that. And I do think it's good for recovery to be able to surrender to something outside of you. So, all right, I've gone off on that. What do you think?
Uh, I agree with you, Brannon. I guess I first just want to say to Jeff that, Jeff, you're listening to a podcast that, includes my own personal journey. It includes both Brannon and I's backgrounds. And so the reason you're hearing the flavor of things as they are is that I believe in Christ. I believe that Christ has atoned for my sins. I believe that Christ is the central figure in my life. And when I've placed him there, I've found immense joy. I've found the opportunity for growth, the permission to make mistakes. I've found deep, deep levels of love. And I would say that we do have Christian themes that run through our podcast, and I can't apologize for that. With that said, I think that I agree with you, Brannon, that each of us has to come to a place where we have to decide how to use our agency, and we get to decide what to worship. Now, here's the key, Jeff, I think, is you can hate all things God right now. That's fine. That's part of a process that you're in. I don't know where that ends for you. It could end with, ending up somewhere as a Buddhist, living the noble truths, or it could end up in some other different religion that maybe includes a different version of God. It could end up with no God at all, but it will absolutely include worship of something. And you get to choose what to worship. And you can worship yourself, which will likely not end very well for you. You can worship things and money, which will then just allow you feeling like you've never had enough. You can worship power, which will make you feel weak. You can worship your good looks, which will always make you feel ugly. You can worship whatever you want. But in a solid recovery, I don't know anybody personally. I can't say that it's impossible. I don't know anybody that doesn't have something or somebody bigger than themselves that they have included as part of their life. Maybe it's a set of principles and values, but we have to make a decision about something bigger than ourselves. And if we're at the center of it, which is interesting because there's a dialectic, we are at the center of our recovery, we're responsible for it. But if we're at the center of the universe, then when things happen that are outside of our control, we're totally screwed. There has to be something else to look at that can allow us to have context, perspective, potential for choice. And so as you continue that wrestle, Jeff, I don't know where it ends for you, but I believe it ends with something that's still bigger than you.
But Tyler, I gotta say, and the God you worship right now as a 45-year-old, is that God different than the God you were worshiping when you were 20?
Oh, 100%, Brannon. I've actually kind of gone full circle inside of my own church. I believed in a certain way of being that God was, and then I've had this wrestle that's been continual, and it's brought me all the way back around to almost leaving my church. Now I'm still in my church, and now I've happened to still be in my church with a completely different idea of who God is.
Yeah. I mean, I said to Jenny, like last night we were talking about recovery, and I said, I think what a lot of people don't understand is like, if you really get at the roots of things with this issue, you almost have to have a crisis when it comes to your relationship with God and understand God completely differently. Because if you're in these systems of should and shame and contingency models of God's love and trying to please and trying to please and trying to please, if you don't undo that, you won't actually find your heart. Um, and part of the undoing here is this anger that he has toward God right now. It's like revolting. It's like, ugh, God, like that's just this thing that's just like made me feel like shit my whole life. Right.
Yeah.
And so that's good that he's acknowledging that that's how he's feeling. And I would say pursue the journey still. Like keep moving
Keep
forward.
wrestling. Keep
keep
wrestling.
keep that wrestle, and there's no specific landing place for you. Like, yes, Tyler talks about Christ. That's awesome for Tyler. Tyler found that peace. I have my beliefs as well. The process is what will help you to really know what that is for you. And so yeah, I think but I do believe, and this it's I love the 12 steps, Tyler. And the 12-step model tries hard to be really non-denominational, but it talks about higher power. It talks about something outside of you. Um, and I do believe in that. I do believe, and I could talk specifically about what I believe about higher power, but I do believe that you have to be open to something outside of you, or it I've seen people really struggle with recovery when they have nothing. So,
Yeah.
all right, one more question.
Yeah, go for it.
All right, this one is not like a 5 to 10 minute question, but I'm gonna say it. So,
Okay.
my husband and I are still together and working on our marriage after years of lies, gaslighting, and betrayal. This is from Trisha, by the way. I love him, but 4 years out of disclosure, I don't think I can ever forgive him. Can we have a happy marriage without forgiveness?
Trisha, thank you for reaching out on this, Trisha. I think you're speaking the words that are on the hearts of a lot of people who are trying to navigate this recovery process. Man, Brannon, this one should be a whole episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about it. Can you still have a happy marriage and not forgive?
Yeah. I mean, I have an answer, but do you want me to?
You can go ahead, Brannon.
No, no, you can't. Um, uh, to just be blunt and straightforward, no. So, what if forgiveness is difficult, then don't start with pushing yourself into trying to force yourself to forgive, because forgiveness doesn't happen in your head. It happens in your heart and in your soul. And forgiveness is a process of grief and coming to acceptance. So forgiveness might take some time. So you can have a happy marriage as you work through that forgiveness process, and you can learn and grow in each stage of that process, um, as long as you're moving forward. So if you give up and you're just stuck, it's kind of what we were saying about the God question. If you give up and you're just stuck in like, nope, I can never trust, I'll always hate, I'll always be, this or that or whatever, that's where I am no matter what, then you'll continue to resonate in that space and in that energy unless you're engaging in that process of healing. And, Tyler, when somebody has forgiven, like, what do they say? What is forgiveness? How does it feel?
It's like a release. It's like a letting go. It's like a burden comes off.
Yeah, it's like a huge relief. Um, and and uh, and there's radical acceptance there, right? And even the next step is gratitude for the struggle, for the wrongdoing, um, which I know can be really hard to hear. Um, but that's what happens when the forgiveness process has been worked through. Um, so yeah, can you have a happy marriage and not forgive? I think that's hard, because then your marriage is going to resonate in resentment, fear, shame, should, like all control, all of those things are going to be there without the forgiveness.
I think Brannon, sometimes when we talk about this word forgiveness, there are so many other things that are they're attached, but they're not the same as forgiveness, but we treat them all the same. And so when we say the word forgiveness, we also include in that word, we include things like forgetting. We include things like allowing it to happen again. We include
Yeah, I
things
know.
like trust. All of those things are all tied together, but they're not the same. And forgiveness, remember, forgiveness, the reason the reason you can't have a great marriage if you don't forgive has less to do with the marriage itself and more to do with your ability to give yourself to the marriage. And if you can't give yourself fully to the marriage, you can only hit certain levels of intimacy and connection that otherwise you got to take that risk again in order to have those deeper levels of intimacy and connection.
But
Right.
Tyler, I love what you're saying, but those feelings of anger and resentment and fear, in order to forgive, you might need to listen to those things. And so instead of pushing for deeper connection, it's like if your partner continues to act out and hurt you and do all of these things, then you might need to get divorced so that you can forgive. Or do you see what I'm saying? You might need to have
Maybe.
a boundary so that then you can let go and find that relief. And this is kind of the dilemma we always see is I can't get divorced. I got to stay in this. I can't have boundaries, but they're choosing their addiction still over and over again. How do I forgive? Because I'll get hurt if I forgive. Right?
That's how those words all become attached to each other, is that instead of forgiveness means I need to do all of those things, trust and allow myself to be, it's actually, if I set true boundaries around my values and then I offer trust at the level that there's trustworthiness,
Yes.
Then I can open myself up to more of the experience of what that relationship's going to offer.
Yep.
But if I'm trying to force all those things to happen first, it actually prevents forgiveness from happening.
Yep.
And I would just come back and reiterate this again for you, Trisha. The only person the primary person that the lack of forgiveness is affecting is you. At the same time that what Brannon said is completely true, that it's a process and it's okay to be a process. And inside of a marriage, that process of anger and sadness and loss and depression and acceptance occasionally, and then back through all of those again, that actually can be a gift to the relationship if both of you see it as a process.
Yeah. Yep. I think forgiveness is completely individual. Like a person can go through the forgiveness process and find that healing on their own. Trust in a relationship and intimacy it takes two. And so you can continue to go through the forgiveness process. They cannot build trust with you, and you can continue to go through the forgiveness process. And your relationship is probably going to shift. It's probably going to change as a result. Right? So forgiveness is not betraying yourself in any way.
Nope.
In any way. Tyler, this is fun. These are great. These are great questions.
We're getting some really good questions.
We need to do more of this.
Yeah, we need to try to keep catching up on some of these from time to time. And also, those of you who are submitting these questions, Brannon and I are going off of what we can kind of read in between the lines. We don't have a lot of the context. So, if you have questions like this and you're willing to bring yourself onto the show, we would love to have you on.
Absolutely. So you guys, thank you for listening. I hope this was helpful. And have a wonderful day. We'll see you guys.